All right, everyone, get ready because today we are diving deep, deep, deep into how to completely crush part 2 of the IELTS speaking test.
Oh, yeah.
And to help us navigate these tricky waters, we are going to be taking a close look at a lesson from English Voice Club.
Okay.
You know, it's a super popular online resource for all things IELTS.
Very good resource.
So if you're out there and you're thinking about taking the IELTS, definitely check them out. But
yeah.
I know test prep can be a total drag, but I promise we've got some really cool insider tips coming your way, so stick with us.
Absolutely.
Not only will these tips help you boost your score, but I think they'll also make this whole process feel a lot less scary.
A lot less intimidating. Yeah.
Way less intimidating, right?
Yeah,
Because the IELTS is scary.
It is, yeah. It's interesting because a lot of people, I think, they go into the IELTS speaking test thinking that it's just about how quickly and how perfectly you can speak.
Yeah.
But part 2 is a little bit different, right? It's all about thinking on your feet, organizing your thoughts when you're under pressure,
Oh,
and then delivering a coherent response, like all within a very strict time limit.
yeah.
It's a whole different ballgame.
Okay, so paint us a picture here.
Yeah.
What's the actual setup for part 2 of the IELTS speaking test?
So picture yourself. You're in the test room.
Okay.
The examiner slides you a topic card.
Uh-huh.
This is kind of like your mission.
Yeah.
It's got some specific bullet points that you have to address.
Right.
You've got 1 minute to gather your thoughts, jot down a couple of notes,
Okay.
and then boom, you have 2 minutes to speak.
2 minutes to speak. Wow.
2 minutes to speak.
That's not a lot of time.
I've seen really fluent speakers
Yeah.
get really flustered by part 2.
I can imagine. Because you're right. It's not just about knowing English. It's about performing under
Right.
pressure
Absolutely.
with time constraints.
Yeah.
And, I mean, 1 minute to prep, that's barely enough time to, like, process what's happening.
Right.
So what does English Voice Club say about making the most of that minute, that one precious minute that you have?
Well, the first thing they say, which may seem a little counterintuitive,
Yeah.
is don't be afraid to ask the examiner for clarification.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
If anything,
Yeah.
on that card.
Yeah.
If any word or phrase is even a little bit unclear,
Yeah.
just ask, you know?
Interesting.
It's better to spend a couple seconds getting clarity
Right.
than to spend 2 minutes talking about the wrong thing.
Totally. Yeah. Clarity over panic.
Yes, exactly.
So once we've, like, deciphered the mission, we know what we're talking about.
Uh-huh.
How do we use that minute wisely?
Yeah.
Is it like a frantic scribbling of notes?
Not really, no.
Okay.
The key here is targeted note-taking.
Okay.
And English Voice Club calls it keyword webbing.
Keyword webbing.
Yeah.
So instead of writing out full sentences, you jot down like power words?
Power phrases.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of create a web of ideas that are related to each bullet point.
I like it.
Yeah, for example,
Okay.
let's say the card asks you to describe a time you had to make a really difficult choice.
Right.
Your notes might look like this. University major,
Okay.
branching out to, like, computer science or engineering.
Yeah.
And then maybe, like, IT, interesting career opportunities.
Right. So you're just getting those little
Yeah.
nuggets, and then those will trigger.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, that triggers a whole network of thoughts.
Okay, so it's less about perfectly formed sentences
Yeah.
and more about
Sparking those mental connections.
working those connections.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's really good.
But let's be honest, you know, when I hear structured speaking test, a part of me is like, that sounds a little boring.
I understand that.
Right.
Yeah,
But in this case, it sounds like structure is actually kind of our secret weapon.
it really is, yeah.
So how so?
Well, I think structure is huge in part 2 because it keeps you on track, you know, so you don't just like start rambling and lose your train of thought.
Yeah.
And it also makes it way easier for the examiner
Right.
to follow along with what you're saying.
Totally.
You know, think of it like building a house, right? You need to have a solid framework in place
Yeah.
before you start adding all the fancy decorations.
Right.
And English Voice Club actually gives a really simple and, I think, foolproof structure.
Okay.
They say, start strong,
Okay.
follow the bullets,
Uh-huh.
go deep,
Okay.
and finish strong.
I like it. Okay. Break it down for us.
Yeah.
What does a strong start actually sound like in this context?
They give you a lot of really helpful opening phrases.
Yeah.
So you could say something like, I'm going to tell you about,
Okay.
or let me share an experience when.
Uh-huh.
So you're signaling to the examiner that you're organized and ready to answer the question.
Yeah.
You're ready to tackle the task.
Cool. So we've laid the foundation with
Yeah.
our strong start.
Uh-huh.
What comes next in this structured masterpiece?
Okay, so after you've got your strong start, You basically want to tackle each bullet point from the topic card one by one.
Right.
It's almost like you're checking things off a to-do list.
Okay.
And what this does is it shows the examiner that you're not just rambling.
Right.
You're actually directly responding to what's on the card.
Okay.
And remember that keyword web we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
Those keywords are like your guideposts as you talk about each point.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And as you're going through each bullet point,
Yeah.
the last part of the prompt is usually more of an open-ended question.
Okay.
And this is really your time to shine.
Yeah.
This is where you can show off your range of vocabulary
Right.
and your ability to express more complex ideas.
Okay, so we've hit all the bullet points. We've
Yeah.
dived deep into that last question, left no stone unturned.
Okay.
But how do we wrap things up?
Yeah.
Like, how do we avoid sounding like we just ran out of steam?
Yeah.
There's got to be a better way to end than just, like, trailing off.
It's yeah, that's it, I guess.
Yeah, you don't want to just fade out like that.
No.
So English Voice Club recommends using specific concluding phrases that create a sense of closure.
Okay.
So you could say, like, that's why I believe,
Uh-huh.
or looking back, I realize.
Right.
And that way you're not awkwardly ending.
Yeah.
And it shows that you're in control of the timing and the structure,
Right.
which the examiners like.
Okay. So I'm starting to see how all these like little techniques
Yeah,
can actually have a huge impact.
they really do.
But what elevates an answer from like good
Uh-huh.
to absolutely exceptional?
Yeah.
What makes it stick in the examiner's mind?
That's a great question. That's where the real artistry comes in, and English Voice Club, they really emphasize this technique. It's so simple, but it's so powerful.
Okay.
Basically, for every point you make, you want to try and include at least one fact and one opinion. It's like you're adding spices to a dish.
It just brings out all the flavor and it makes it much more memorable.
Okay, I like that. I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So can you give me a concrete example of what this fact plus opinion combo would look like?
Yeah, for sure. So let's just stick with that difficult choice prompt.
Okay.
So instead of just saying, I had to choose between computer science and engineering,
Right.
you could say something like, I had to choose between computer science and engineering, which were both really interesting to me. But honestly, I always felt more drawn to the creative problem-solving aspect of computer science.
Right.
So you're adding that little...
It's like you're giving them a glimpse into your
Up top.
brain
Yeah.
instead of just the facts.
It makes it more personal.
Yeah, it makes you human.
Exactly. And you can use that same technique with those concluding phrases as well.
Okay.
So instead of just ending with something like, I feel like I made the right decision,
Right.
you could say, looking back, I realized that choosing computer science was the right decision because I really enjoy the challenges and the creative opportunities that it gives me.
Yeah, you're painting a much more vivid picture.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've nailed the structure. We've got our keyword web. We're adding those facts and opinions.
Yeah.
But we still haven't really talked about the time limit.
Right.
2 minutes. How do we make sure we cover everything
Yeah.
without sounding like we're just like rushing through it?
Yeah. Timing is definitely a factor, but it's more about pacing yourself than like speed talking.
Okay.
The sweet spot, according to English Voice Club, is around 90 seconds.
90 seconds. Okay.
Yeah, because that gives you a little buffer
Yeah.
just in case you speak a little slower on test day.
Yeah.
And it makes sure that you've covered all of the important points.
Okay, but 90 seconds still feels kind of tight
I know.
to get all of that in.
I know, but that's where practice really comes in.
Okay.
Yeah, so you want to time yourself as you practice with different prompts and get comfortable with how much you can say in 90 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And also just remember, if you get cut off, it's not the end of the world.
Okay.
The most important thing is that you've addressed every point on the card.
So it's less about cramming in as much information as possible.
Yes.
And more about hitting those key points.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about those moments where our minds just go blank?
Yeah.
Even with all of this amazing prep, what happens if we just like freeze up?
Totally normal.
Yeah.
Totally normal. And English Voice Club actually suggests tackling that fear head on
Okay.
during your practice time.
So instead of just...
Yeah, so instead of just practicing with topics that you're already comfortable with,
Right.
you should actually seek out the most difficult or even like the most boring prompts you can find.
Really?
Yeah, it's kind of like training for a marathon. You don't just run on flat ground.
Right.
You have to train on hills to build those mental muscles.
Okay, so we're intentionally putting ourselves in uncomfortable situations.
A little bit, yeah.
To
It
prepare.
helps.
I like
It
it.
helps.
But what if, despite all that training, that dreaded blank mind strikes on test day?
Okay, so here's a secret weapon
Okay.
from English Voice Club. You're allowed to get creative.
Wait, really?
Yeah, remember, the examiner isn't fact-checking your life story.
Right.
The goal is to demonstrate your language skills,
Yeah.
how well you can structure a response,
Right.
and your overall fluency.
So a little improvisation
It's totally fine.
is acceptable.
Yeah,
Okay, that actually takes a lot of pressure off.
yeah.
Okay, so if we're completely stuck, we can pull from...
You can pull from anything, like a friend's experience,
Okay.
a news story you read,
Uh-huh.
even like a movie you saw.
Okay.
You know, you obviously want to adapt it to the prompt, but it can be a really helpful starting point if you're just feeling lost.
Okay, blank mind, somewhat tamed.
Yeah.
But what about the other, like, test day monster
Oh, yeah.
nerves? I think everyone gets at least a little nervous
Oh, absolutely.
before a speaking test.
Nerves are completely natural. It's very rare to find someone who can just like stand up and speak in a foreign language under pressure
Right.
and not feel at least a little bit nervous.
Okay, good to know it's not just me.
Uh-huh.
But are there strategies for, like, managing those nerves?
There are. Yeah, English Voice Club has a really good tip for this.
Okay.
They say, practice speaking in front of an audience as much as possible.
Okay.
So that could be in a classroom setting with a study group,
Right.
or even just with a friend or a family member.
It's about getting used to that feeling of, like, because I'm on stage.
Yeah, like all eyes on me.
Right.
Yeah. And the more you expose yourself to that situation,
Right.
the less intimidating it's going to feel on test day.
Totally makes sense. But what about those of us who are just, like, naturally prone to anxiety?
Yeah.
Like, are there any mental tricks we can use?
Yeah, so English Voice Club, they give this really cool reframing technique.
Okay.
So instead of thinking, oh no, I'm so nervous, try to think, this is my chance to shine. I'm excited to show them what I can do.
I love that it's like flipping the script
Yeah.
on those negative thoughts.
Yeah, you're taking that nervous energy
Yeah.
and turning it into something positive.
Right. Because even, like, seasoned public speakers, they probably still get
Oh,
a
yeah.
little nervous.
Of course, yeah.
Beforehand. It's just part of being human.
Part of the experience.
Okay, so we've got tools now for tackling blank minds,
Uh-huh.
taming those nerves.
Yeah.
But are there any other common IELTS Part 2 traps that we should be aware of?
Hmm.
Like, are there certain mistakes that people tend to make?
Yeah. Rambling, for sure.
Yeah.
It's easy to fall into that trap, especially if you're nervous.
Oh, totally. Like, I feel like my brain would just go into overdrive
Yeah.
and words would just start spilling out.
Yeah, and that's where that structure we talked about
Right.
and those keyword notes,
Yeah.
they're so helpful. They're
Yeah.
like your guardrails,
Yeah.
keeping you on track.
Yeah.
That strong opening statement that you practice,
Yeah.
it sets the tone,
Uh-huh.
and it helps you stay focused.
Right.
And you can also use linking words,
Oh, yeah.
like firstly,
Uh-huh.
secondly,
Right, yeah.
finally,
Right.
to create a really smooth flow and to signal to the examiner that you're moving through your points.
Yeah, it's like those little bridges
Yeah.
that connect our ideas.
Yeah.
Okay, so structure is key for avoiding rambling.
Uh-huh.
Any other common pitfalls we should be aware of?
Another mistake that I see a lot is people focusing way too much on grammar and vocabulary
Yeah.
at the expense of fluency and pronunciation.
Right.
You know, you have to remember the IELTS speaking test is about communication,
Right.
not perfection.
So it's better to speak more naturally
Yeah.
and make a few small grammatical errors
Uh-huh.
than to sound like a robot.
Exactly.
Huh.
The examiners want to see that you can express yourself fluently and confidently.
Oh, okay.
Don't be afraid to let your personality come through a little.
That's encouraging. It's a good reminder that the IELTS isn't trying to trick us.
No.
You know, it's trying to assess our actual communication skills.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about structure,
Yeah.
avoiding rambling,
Uh-huh.
focusing on fluency.
Yeah.
Any other pearls of wisdom from English Voice Club before we wrap things up?
One last thing. They really emphasize the importance of finishing strong.
Oh.
It's kind of like a gymnast sticking the landing.
Oh.
You know, you want to end your response with confidence and purpose.
Right. No trailing off into awkward silence.
Exactly.
I want to make sure we leave a good impression.
Yeah. And don't forget those nonverbal cues as well.
Oh, right.
So like maintaining eye contact,
Yeah.
smiling, and just projecting a sense of calm confidence.
Right. It's all about the overall presentation.
Yeah.
We're not just delivering information, we're communicating.
Right.
Okay, I'm feeling so much more prepared and confident now.
I'm glad to hear that.
Thank you for all of these insights.
You're welcome.
This was great.
My pleasure.
And that brings us to the end of our IELTS Speaking Part 2 deep dive.
Yeah.
I hope you learned something.
I hope so, too.
I know I did.
Uh,
And if you've been listening along and taking notes, I bet you're feeling way more prepared to ace that speaking test.
I hope so.
But before you go out there and conquer the IELTS, I want to leave you with a little challenge now that you have all of these amazing tools and strategies.
Okay.
What topic from your own life would you choose to just nail that IELTS Speaking Part 2?
That's a good question.
Think about it, practice it, and go out there and rock that test.
Good luck.